Hi friends, welcome to the Fibernymph Dyeworks channel. My name is Lisa, also known as Fibernymph, and I'm here with you today for a special episode. This is my year-in review video for 2023 and a look ahead into what 2024 might hold for me, making-wise and otherwise. So we're going to get started with that. If you are a new viewer, please know that this is not a regular episode. I will actually be recording my first 2024 regular episode today as well, but I don't anticipate putting that up on the channel for at least a day or two, just so I'm not putting two videos up at once. But this one will go up first, and then you will see my first regular episode in a day or so. So anyway, whether you are a return viewer or a new viewer, welcome. I'm really glad you're here. And it is, you can probably see, kind of a snowy day, although the sun is trying to come out today. So the lighting is a little bit weird at the moment. I feel fuzzy. That could also be my contacts. I'm having a contact issue at the moment, but we're going to just go with things. So, I would like to say that I do these episodes pretty much every year, wrapping up the year before and looking into the year ahead. And as they go, this year's is going to be a little bit looser than what I normally do. I don't have a whole lot of hard data and statistics and things like that about my making from last year. It just really, I don't care about that at this point. I once did. I used to keep track of yardage, how many yards of yarn I used in a year, things like that. I just don't feel the need to do that anymore. And it's fine. Like, if you do that, that's great. Like I said, I used to. I just don't. So I don't have those kind of numbers or anything for you. I think I was thinking about this as I have lots of notes, by the way, that I'm going to be looking at while I talk to you. As I was thinking about this and putting this video together, I think part of that is I have definitely noticed a shift in myself as a maker in this last year, probably over the last few years, but especially in this last year, that I have become much less a product maker and much more a process maker. Not necessarily from the standpoint of like learning new things, although I have learned new things, and not necessarily to perfect any one skill, although I have gotten better at different things. I think it's more because at the beginning of 2023, when I was starting to put together my list of what I wanted to work on in the year, I looked at what I already had. I had taken a pretty hard look at the knitwear that I own, and I realized there's a lot of things that I just don't need a lot more of, like hats and mitts and socks. I had so many, and I wasn't using a lot of them. And so it seemed like, okay, why make more if I'm not even going to be using them? Yes, you can make some as gifts or what have you, but there's a limit as to how much you really can make. So I was trying to be a little bit more mindful in what I was planning to make last year for that reason. And I think that is part of the reason why I was less product focused in just churning things out, if that makes sense. And the other thing this actually had an impact on, it wasn't so much a reason for, but I noticed it had an impact on, was my personal stash yarn challenge that I had done the year before, which was highly successful for me. I used up most of that year's personal stash yarn that I was setting aside to use each month. But last year I was not as successful at that, and I am going to talk about that a little bit as we go through here. But I think part of that is because that first year that I did it and I had set yarn aside, like as I was opening those yarns every month, I would just, mostly it was accessories. I was picking an accessory to make, and I made it. Some of them are ones that I've used, some of them are not. And so this year when I had my stash yarn, challenge yarn, I didn't want to just make things to make them. I wanted to make things that I knew I would get use out of. And I think that's part of the reason why I didn't have quite as much success with that challenge for myself last year. And I'm not going to be doing it this year. I'm going to be focusing my efforts elsewhere. It was good for the year that it worked. but things aren't meant to be done all the time, I guess. Anyway, that said, I did actually tally up most of the things I made. And I say most because I think I've probably made some things this year that never got project pages because they were just like little quickie things, maybe. I don't know. But I did tally up most of what I've made. And I'm not including whips. I'm just including finished objects, which those will go into my 2024 plans, my whips. But here's what I made last year that I can account for. I made 5 cowls, 5 pairs of socks, 4 scarves, 6 shawls, 3 garments, 4 hats, 1 blanket, 2 pairs of mitts, and 7 miscellaneous items, which are just small little things. That also included a whole bunch of worsted weight scrap granny squares. Do you remember that project? If you watched the podcast, I had actually kind of forgotten that I had done that, which is sort of funny. Haven't decided what I'm going to do with those granny squares yet, but they're there. So of those projects that I just mentioned to you, 6 of those items were crocheted. 3 of them were weaving projects. 9 of them were made from scraps. Using up scraps was one of my goals for last year. I don't know that I reached the 100 gram mark, or I'm sorry, 1,000 grams. I wanted to use 1,000 grams of scraps, and I don't think I got to that. But I probably got close. Again, I did not end up keeping track of it as closely as I thought I would. But I'm happy to have used scraps for 9 projects. 2 were design projects. 5 were made with my 2023 Personal Stash Yarn Challenge yarn. So I didn't completely fail at that. And 2 projects were made with leftover Personal Stash Yarn Challenge yarns from 2022. So that's nice too. And lastly, 4 of those projects that I did last year, or that I finished last year, were actually 2022 whips that carried into 2023. So I finished some whips too. I am overall very happy with what I did last year. It was not an intense making year for me. It was an intense work year for me, dyeing-wise. It was very busy, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit too in the 2024 section. But I feel like my making was, I don't really know how to characterize it. It just I wasn't focused on as many things. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so having known going into 2023 that I really didn't need a lot of things, I tried to make my project planning for the year, as much as I plan my projects for a year in advance, I tried to be a little bit more mindful with it. And I used the Stop Shooting on Yourself make-along that I hosted last year in my in the podcast group. I used that as my planning guide. I made my own wish list. We did wish lists for the Stop Shooting on Yourself Mal, and I used that as a general guide throughout the year. I checked in on it, a handful of times throughout the years, updated it, laughed at some of the things I thought I was going to do at the beginning of the year that never came to fruition. But that's okay too. That's what it was meant to be. It was just meant to be a guideline. So going off of that, I'm going to kind of go down through projects that I had on that list and just reflect a little bit on some of them and tell you what I am most happy with out of the year, because I did have some projects that I was really, really happy with and very proud to have finished and felt really good about. The top thing on my list, though, was garments, because when I looked at what I did have, I have tons of accessories, not quite as many garments. I do have a fair few hand knit sweaters, but they're not all ones that I always get a lot of wear out of. So I had put garments at the top of my list because I really did want to be able to make more sweaters for myself. And that kind of got to a bumpy start, you might remember, because I started out with the Highland Slipover thinking that was going to be a really fast and easy project. And I got so sidetracked with that because it just did not work out super well. It ended up being way oversized. I had to do a lot of finagling to get it to fit in any way that it was comfortable because I did something weird in the back. You probably have heard all about this if you've watched past episodes. But anyway, I did finally finish it in April. Started it in January, finished it in April. It was made out of hand spun that I really loved. And it is warm, and I have worn it occasionally. I'm still not 100% convinced that I love it enough to keep it. I may end up still ripping it out at some point. I have not woven in all of my ends. They're just dangling on the inside, which is always fun. But yeah, for now, it's getting a little bit of use here and there until I really decide whether I want to keep it or just rip it and reclaim that hand spun and use it for something else. Because it was a lot of hand spun, and it's really nice, like nice yarn that I would like to be able to wear. So we'll see. But that got me off to a bumpy start with my garment making. I kind of redeemed that though when I finished a long-term whip, started back in June of 2020, which was my Granny Stripes cardigan, which was another project that hit some bumps and snags along the way, particularly with fit. Now I have to say I started that project, I'm pretty sure I started it in June of 2020, and my original plan for that was for it to be a sample for shows to show off all the colors of my mountain tweed yarn. Or all of my colors in mountain tweed, because I made it out of my mountain tweed BFL. That was back when I was hand winding minis from mountain tweed BFL. I can now get my mountain tweed in a merino base for minis that are already minis. It makes life so much easier. But anyway, with the pandemic, lingering and shows not happening, like I kind of lost the impetus to want to get that done as a sample for that reason. And then I also ended up having fit issues with that. It was not going to be comfortable as a cardigan, and I ended up cutting my losses and just turning it into a vest. And I created some nice wide button bands. Well, not button bands because I didn't put buttons on it, but nice wide edges. And I really like it. I do wear it fairly regularly. It's comfortable, it's bright, it's colorful. So I was really happy to have that as a finished project last year. Garment wise though, my third garment ended up being my absolute favorite. It was not even on my radar at the beginning of the year, and it was my Deshane that I am wearing right now. So this was a surprise project in so many ways, because number one, I didn't even have the yarn. The yarn came to me in an unexpected way. If you watch the podcast, you've heard this story before too, but Carol from A Stitch in Time podcast had this yarn. She had tried making several things with it. They had never worked out for her, and she was, questioning whether she was even going to keep the yarn. And, long story short, I offered to take it off of her hands, so we did a trade, and I got this beautiful orange yarn because I love orange. You guys know that. And so once I got the yarn and figured out, yardage that I had to work with, and I went into my queue and looked for a sweater to match up, and Deshane has been in my queue for a very long time, and I decided to try that, and it worked out perfectly. I knit this sweater through September and finished it in late October before Halloween because I wanted it to be a Halloween sweater. I honestly don't remember if I wore it on Halloween or not because it was a little warm. But yeah, I'm so happy with this sweater. It's made out of Cascade 220. The color was tangerine. And it's so comfortable, and like on a day like today, it's a perfect sweater to wear. So this is definitely my happiest garment make of the year. Every time I put this sweater on, I'm just so thrilled. I think sometimes the projects that we don't really plan out can be some of the best ones in the outcome. So again, Carol, thank you for sharing this yarn with me and for giving me a really happy garment make for 2023. Okay, so that was garments. Now, two other things that I was very happy with were the two design projects that I did publish. Now, I will say I'm a little sad that I only published two designs because designing was something that I really wanted to work on more last year. Fluffy Hearts was my first design that I published, and I published that in February, and I published that as a fundraiser so I could make a donation to Canines for Warriors, which is a group that works to end veteran suicide, which is a cause near and dear to my heart. And so I was just thrilled with not only the pattern, because they were just cute little hearts, but how well it was received. And I sold that pattern all through last year, and I had pattern and yarn kits in the shop for a very long time. And so thank you to all of you guys for making that a success. And I hope you will continue to enjoy your fluffy hearts into the future if you have that pattern. The pattern's still available in my shop. It will remain available and on Ravelry. Anyway, but the other one is my reciprocal shawl, which, oh my goodness, this is probably the reason why I did not design more last year, because reciprocal took me pretty much all year to finally get published. Reciprocal started as a pattern that I was just knitting on the fly, making up as I went with my January personal stash yarn challenge yarn last year. And it worked out really well. And then I had some people say, oh, are you going to write that up? And I'm like, sure, I can write that up. And so I set about writing it up. I ended up with people testing it fairly soon, after I had it written up. And then I set about knitting samples, and I knit 4 more reciprocals after that first one. 2 of them were fingering weight and 2 of them were DK weight. And each one I did a single skein one and a 2 skein one. I think it was probably the fingering weight 2 skein one that took me the longest. That would make sense. And then I just, with everything else going on in life, I just wasn't able to get it together, and I had a horrible time getting finished pictures of that shawl for the pattern. It was just the silliest thing that kept delaying it. But you know what? I just trust that there was a reason for it. And when I finally did release it in November, it had a really great reception. And I hope if you have the pattern that you're enjoying it. I'm actually knitting another one of them right now because they make great gifts. And they're easy but not boring, at least if you like doing knits and purls, like alternating, because it's a moss stitch pattern. So anyway, enough about that, but I'm really happy with the outcome of that and with getting those 2 patterns out. I was also happy that I did weaving, some weaving projects that I was able to end up putting in my shop. And as of now, they've all sold, which is really nice. There were a couple that had been hanging out in the shop for a while, but they've sold recently. So I'm really glad to have done that, and I would like to do that more as well. That had been a goal for me for a while, was to, weave some things that I could put in the shop. So there was that, and then there was spinning. I spun a lot last year, which is great because the last few years prior, I hadn't done a lot of spinning. I've got 2 wheels, and I also have a little nano e-wheel that I got this year. I don't know that I'll ever use it a lot, but it was a fun experiment to play with. Yeah, I did a lot. I finished my red, orange, gold kind of combo spin that I had started in 2020. Got that finished early in the year. I had spun that with the intention of making a DRK everyday pullover. I have not made that yet. Haven't used the yarn. I started waffling on whether that was actually the pattern I wanted to make or not. Hopefully it will become a sweater this year, whether it's that one or something else. I don't know. But I finished that. And then during Tour de Fleece, I did spin during Tour de Fleece last year, which I, again, have not done that in a long time. And so I did another combo spin that ended up with, I think it was a 4 skein combo spin, or I ended up with 4 skeins. I don't remember how many. I think it was 3. I don't remember. Anyway, here's a picture of the yarn. So that was really pleasing. And then when I was done with that, and when Tour de Fleece was over, I continued to spin some of the yarn that I had pulled out to potentially work on during Tour de Fleece. And I did some more spinning. And then most recently, which I haven't even had a chance to show on podcast yet, but I did do some Advent spinning with Knit Spin Farms Bat Vent. And I did that through December, and I did finish that before the end of the year. So I was really pleased with that as well. That was, I would say, the big combo spin and the Bat Vent were like the most exciting spins of the year for me last year. Let's see. The project that I am without a doubt most proud of from last year and makes me the most happy is the college blanket that I knit for my grandson last year. My grandson graduated high school last year, and I had told him if he wanted, I would make him a blanket to take with him to college in his college colors, and he was very happy with that. And I knew that I would be doing this, and I wish I would have started it sooner in retrospect, but in my defense, he also didn't really 100% commit to a college till a little later than I thought he would. But I did knit it within 2 months. I think July into August, and it wasn't even 2 months because I gave it to him kind of in the beginning of August. But I did the green and the gold for his college, and it turned out great. It was 88 mitered squares, Cascade 220 and a green and a gold, and 220 superwash, I should add, because it's going to a college dorm, or it's at a college dorm now. And just when I gave it to him, he was just, he's a very low-key kid. So this picture is him happy and excited with his blanket. And subsequently, I got to see a picture of it in his dorm room on his bed. And then he sent me a picture when he was using it one day. Like they were sitting on the floor watching TV or something in the dorm, and he was wrapped up in it. So, it's cool. It makes my grandma heart really, really warm and fuzzy to know that project was so well received and is being used. So I'm just super glad about that. So that would probably be the highlight project of my year from last year. Beyond that, I did have some other smaller goals in my soy mal list. Some I worked on a little bit, some didn't really see much action at all, and it's okay. Like I said, overall, I'm super happy with what I accomplished last year, and what didn't get done. This is another year. There's always another chance to do things. Making is meant to be fun. It's not meant to be high pressure. And so that's what I was trying to keep in mind last year also. And I did. So I'm glad about that. Another couple of realizations that I had with regard to the whole not needing to make things just for the sake of making things, that were kind of side benefits, I guess, of that is, number one, I realized that if I'm working on fewer projects at a time, I'm more likely to actually finish things. I know, isn't that a shock? And B, I'm also less likely to lose interest or get distracted from them and then have them just sit in a bin of, languishing whips forever. I did take some time last year to weed through my whips bin at different points, and I have really narrowed that down. I'm trying to think. There's a couple of bigger projects that are still in there that I'll probably get back to, but for the most part, I have taken a lot of projects out of there. I have some design projects that are still in it that I hope to see some activity with this coming year. But anyway, again, it's all about just like putting things, in the forefront that I really want to focus on, even so much as like I try to keep only a few active projects, like on my Ravelry page. Like if I have things that I'm definitely not going to be working on soon, I put them in hibernation so they're not right there every time I go and look at that project page, and it doesn't overwhelm me or make me feel guilty for not working on them, because that's not what making should be about. So I'm just trying to find ways to better enjoy my making. Okay, so that takes us to the moving into 2024 part. It's the 3rd of January now, so we're still moving in. I'm easing into this year. I'm not rushing into anything, so it's a good time to talk about what I'm thinking about for this coming year. And again, this year, I'm going to be using the make-along that I'm hosting, which this year it's called the Project Pool Make-Along. I'm using that as sort of my home base for keeping track, such as it is, of a list of things that I would kind of like to work on. Now, I did do a video about the Project Pool Make-Along last week, I guess, maybe the week before, I don't remember at this point, but there is a video up about that. I will link that if you're interested in joining in. But the general gist of it is putting together a manageable pool or group of projects that you'd like to work on, whether that's specific yarns, specific patterns. I know one person's, using some specific books that they have that they would like to do projects from, whatever it is for you. But the idea is to keep it at a manageable number. I was saying between like 10 and 20. I know a lot of people are doing maybe 24 because they're doing a 24 and 24 kind of thing. I think my list is currently up to 25. But that was because I put like a generalization in there too. But the idea is to like take that pool, and whether you have it physically in a bin or a basket or something like that, or maybe it's just, a list, or I'm planning to actually make sticky notes for all of my list items and have those in plain sight, because right now that's a little more manageable for me rather than having everything in one big bin. We've got some storage space issues up here at the mountain house, at least where I can keep things out and see them and they're not going to get attacked by cats. So anyway, I think I'm going to try the sticky note way of doing it, and then that way as I finish something I can take the sticky note down. Anyway, that's what I'm going to be using as far as my general guideline for my making year, and then I'll just revisit it as I go along. And I will also mention that Carol, again from a Stitch in Time podcast, she's also hosting some make-alongs this year that my project pool make-along and her make-alongs really would line up super well together if you are on the lookout for extra make-alongs to do. So check hers out. I'll link her podcast in the show notes below. So key things that are on my list to begin with. Once again, garments, sweaters specifically. I really want to focus more on sweaters this year. And I'm starting out with 4 sweater projects that I would really like to focus on. Number 1, I started an Ariana cardigan last fall, which is a crochet pattern. I would like to finish that. It's not half done. I'm saying it's probably about 30% done. But I set it aside because I was working on other things in December and it just would not fit into what time I had. So it's been sort of sitting, waiting. So I'm hoping to get back to that and finish that up in the next month or 2. I would also like to make a crocheted top, which I did talk about last year, and I actually did some swatching for it. There's no pattern for it. It's something that I saw Mars from Hey Brownberry do last year at one point. It's just 2 crocheted squares that you then seam together. She did not put sleeves on hers, I don't think. I may or may not put sleeves on mine. It depends on how it goes, but I really want to give it a try. And I have some Araucania Ranco that I've had for years in this really beautiful red color, and that's what I want to use. So I would like to try to do that. I'm also planning to make the Curdach, Curdach, cardigan by Carol Feller this year, using that beautiful bluish green Donegal tweed that I got from our Ireland trip 2 years ago now. Okay, in April, it's going to be 2 years since we were in Ireland. That blows my mind. It doesn't seem like it's been that long ago, but it has. And I definitely want to use that yarn this year and be able to wear that sweater. So that's on my agenda. And I still definitely want to make something out of that red-orange combo spin. Whether it does end up being the DRK Everyday Pullover or a different sweater, I don't know. But I definitely want that to be a garment that gets made this year. I recently went through my Ravelry queue. I know everybody uses their queue differently if you're on Ravelry. Some people only put things in that they're definitely planning on making in the near future, and then they use like favorites for other things. I put everything in my queue that I see that I like. That's how I use it. And then it gets unwieldy because I'm queuing everything under the sun. But every so often I do go through my queue and I weed things out. And I did this in December. I spent one day, part of one day. Actually, I think it was one day that I was at the hospital having a test and I had to like do a lot of prep stuff at the hospital. And I just sat there and I weeded through my Ravelry queue. And I got rid of at least 6 pages worth of patterns that I just knew I was not ever going to make. Now, the thing is, I, in the past, have had a bad habit of queuing a pattern and then being like, yes, I need to buy this pattern right now. So I have a lot of patterns in my queue that I also have already purchased the pattern for and then I've never made. And a lot of those are patterns that I'm not particularly drawn to anymore, but I feel bad because I have patterns for them. So I'm trying to use my queue as sort of an inspiration board, so to speak, for different projects that I might like to do, smaller projects, because a lot of it is accessories. I mean, there's a ton of sweaters and big shawls too, but mainly for accessories. So I'm drawing from my queue, especially patterns that I already have, for things that I want to make. I can intend to continue my spinning momentum into this year. I have a spinning project that I started right before December, which was my Grab Your Flannel spin. Grab Your Flannel being my Down Cellar Studio Pigskin Party exclusive colorway this season. I'm looking at my wheel, it's sitting over here. So I had started the contrast color because I have the Grab Your Flannel color, and then I dyed up like a semi-solid color that I'm going to apply with it. And I am working on the first skein still of that. So I would like to finish that. That was just set aside for December since I knew I was going to be spinning my bat vent last month. But that is definitely coming up. What else I'm going to spin in the year, that's to be determined. I'm not really planning that out in advance. I have got plenty of fiber to choose from, so hopefully I'll be able to make a good dent in that. I also want to continue weaving, but first up, I have got to finish the weaving project that has been on my big loom, my 24-inch loom, since last April. I again lost steam on that, and I need to get it done. It's not going to be anything perfect, but it needs to get done. So I actually disassembled my loom for the first time since I put it together. I disassembled it before my mom and her husband came for Christmas because we needed the space out there. So I have to put that back together and put it back out in the dining room, living room area once we're done with a different project that Bill is working on right now that's taking up a lot of our floor space. Totally unrelated to anything. Anyway, I'm going to put that loom together, get that off the loom. And then I have smaller projects that I want to do. I have a lot of yarns that I do have specifically set aside for weaving projects. Several of them I would like to be able to put in the shop. So that again is a goal, as is designing. I have so many design projects either started or partially written, and I have tons of ideas. So I would really like to focus on that. And for me at this point, designing is kind of becoming a long game sort of issue because, as you might know, if you watch the regular podcast, my husband retired last year. Sorry, I feel like I have something in my eye. He retired, and so that has, brought about different changes to our life, I guess. And one of those changes is, a lot of traveling that he wants to do, some of which I'll be able to do with him. I obviously cannot do it all because I'm still working. But in the long run, I see designing as something that I will be able to do with a little bit more flexibility. It's not something that I have to be here at the house to do, like dyeing. I have to be here. So I'm really hoping to be able to implement designing into my business a little bit more than it has been in the past. I ultimately would love to be able to design things and then dye the yarn for them and provide kits in the shop. Designing, I really want to step that up for that reason, because I think that's going to become more of what I do as I go into these next years while I am still working. And then there are also non-fiber related crafts. I failed miserably last year. That's harsh, but I did. I failed miserably at most of the non-fiber related crafts I thought I would work on, with the minor exception being some paper crafting I did for a card swap, an art card swap. Not art cards, those are something specific. Basically just pen palish kind of thing with art cards that Joanna from Knit Spin Farm hosted last summer. And then stitch marker making that I did, which I did do some, and I enjoy doing that, and I would like to do more. But I would like to do embroidery. I got a new embroidery tool that I'll talk about at some point, probably in a regular podcast. But I'd like to do some of that. I would like to do some wood burning. I would like to do some drawing and painting. And a lot of that hinges on me making it accessible, like my materials accessible. So out here in the porch room last year, I did try to set things up so like all my paper crafting stuff is out here. I'm trying to make that more easily accessible rather than having it all packed away all the time and have to pull it out. My bead stuff, my stitch marker making stuff is all out here. So I'm trying to make that more accessible. And I have an idea of how to do like my drawing and paint, watercolors kind of stuff. Either setting up kind of a station for that in my office, or even having it be something that is mobile so I can take wherever I want to go in the house and do it. But those are some things that I'm trying to plan out in January so that throughout the rest of the year I'll be able to make use of those things and actually maybe have more success at getting those done this year, just for the fun of it. Sewing is definitely going to be something I'll be doing this year. I think I mentioned that in a podcast, that we bought an RV last fall, and I have sewing to do for that. I'm going to be making valances. I'm going to be making a duvet cover and recovering the cushions at the dining table, the booth for that. So those projects will definitely be happening this year. In closing, I guess I'm trying to have a general direction for my making without having a lot of have to kind of items on it. I've found that the looser that I can keep my crafting and making goals, the better that is for me, the more likely I am to get things done. I feel like if I write down, yes, this list, I'm absolutely definitely going to do these things, then I either perversely decide suddenly that I don't want to do any of them, or it becomes too much of a burden. And I don't want my making to ever be a burden. I want it to be fun. That's what it should do, what it should be. That's my opinion anyway. And overall in life, I'm kind of trying to take like a less is more approach. And so that's kind of also, going into my crafting. Again, with that whole, I don't need to make things just to make them. I want to make things that are actually meaningful, things that I'll actually use or people in my life will actually use. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with my making for this coming year. I haven't done this in a really long time. I used to pick a word for the year, and I haven't done that in several years. But I would say if I had to put a word to this coming year, it would be the word adjustment, because I am kind of adjusting things, as I was just talking about. One reason, my husband being retired now, he's here at home. That has definitely adjusted how things work here at the house on a day-to-day basis. But it also means like I'm trying to adjust my work, the way I work. That's going to be changing. I have some changes to my business I'm going to be making, in addition to like new things that will be coming to the business. But I have things I want to adjust that way just to make it more workable for me at this point in my life, because life isn't static. Things change. And I'm also trying to find what, it's an ongoing effort to try to find the things that are no longer serving you or me. And that's hard, identifying those sometimes, because we cling to things, sometimes just out of routine or stubbornness or tradition. But finding those things that are really not doing me much good anymore and finding how I can let go or lessen them in my life, that's something that I'm also trying to focus on at this point, and just seeing where I want to focus my attention for my making and like in work and in life in general. So that is where I'm at right now. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the adventures are that 2024 is going to bring in making and in life. And I would love to know what you have in store for 2024 in your making as well, or in your life if you want to share that. But do you have any goals made? Are you taking part in any make-alongs, mine or anyone else's, that might be helping to guide your making this coming year? Do you have anything that you really just don't want to focus on anymore? What are some changes that might be influencing that? Do you have a word of the year? I know a lot of people do that, and it can be very helpful. So I would love to know. Feel free to share that in the comments below. And I hope you will come along with me through 2024 in the podcast. I hope to be able to record a little bit more regularly than I was there at the end of 2023. And then if you want a little bit of extra content, there's also a members option here on the YouTube channel. That's usually just a little extra video every month, and you get a lot of thanks from me for helping to support the work I do on this channel. Anyway, that's everything for now. As I said, I will have a regular episode coming out really soon. And until then, take care and please, please enjoy the very beginning of your 2024. I hope it is going really well for you, and I hope it turns out to be the year that you want it to be. So take care. Bye.